Good afternoon. September 16th. Wow. Mid-September. And it's starting to finally feel like September out there. Really enjoying the drier weather, the breezes coming from Hurricane Lee from across from the east. We're here in the western part of the state, so we just have kind of a cloudy day, but kind of breezy, dry, nice. I hope you're having a great day too. So you are listening to Wondrous Roots, your health from the ground up. My name is Becky Montrone. I have a practice here in Keene, New Hampshire, called Wondrous Roots. I am an holistic health practitioner and with a degree in holistic nutrition. And I am also an herbalist. So studied herbalism in depth and have been practicing it for many years. Wondrous Roots has been in force officially since 2005. So we are heading on to our pretty soon 20th anniversary. So we work here. I meet clients in all kinds of for all kinds of health problems in private consultation. That is really a very rewarding part of my work and what I really love. But I also really love the formulating and the compounding of the natural medicines, and whether they be topical body products or internal things. And as many of you know, and you're my wonderful clients, customers, take advantage of. And we really appreciate your patronage and your business. Our normal operating hours here are 9:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. Our phone number is 603-439-2603. You can also reach me at wondrousroots.org. Go to contact us and leave me a message that will come just to my email, my private email, and I will get back to you. Some people, I still have to get back to from the past couple of days, but I will be doing that later today. So what else can I tell you? We're located on the 3rd floor of the Miller Forge building in Keene, New Hampshire. It's a wonderful old mill building, very impeccably kept up. We have handicap access and just a great volume of, number of free parking spaces out there with no time limit. And as in Keene, that's a real commodity. So come on up and see us again, Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 5. And you can catch these podcasts as well later on, as many of you are doing. And I think that's fantastic. One of my listeners said he just really valued the listen on demand, because it's just the way the time falls into his day, and a lot of times having to miss. So you can pick those up by going to wondrousroots.org and going to radio webinars, and you can click there. But just this morning, I asked my husband if he would put together a YouTube channel for these. And so that's in the works, and the channel exists. We don't have anything up on it yet, but all of these recent things will go on. Since I've been doing them, this is my 4th Zoom webinar, will be going up on YouTube. And that makes it great because it's not complicated. One of the problems with my Dropbox links is people are, Dropbox wants you to sign up to get a Dropbox account, and it can be confusing. You don't need to do that, but it can be confusing. And YouTube will also allow us to have a broader reach. So looking forward to that. And then will just post those YouTube things in my subsequent newsletters the following week, probably the one before, and just make it super easy for you to access when you want to. So I think that's my words of introduction. And what I would like to do is just say today, I was really excited to talk on this topic, bee pollen. I bet you weren't expecting that. I have not even hinted at wanting to talk about that. But what I want to say about it is what kind of brought me into thinking about it is the fact that we're coming into what is, historically known as the cold and flu season. And the cold and flu season means people are coming up to our shop and wanting to know, how can I kind of reinforce? What can I maybe do a little extra to make sure that I'm not, that my system is strong? And this is the cold and flu season. It goes way back. And one of the big reasons for that is that the change in temperature, right? So we went from several days, like a week ago, where we were very humid, very, very close, humid, you could say hot weather. The air was very, very humid, very heavy. The dew points were very high. And then all of a sudden it switches. And we have this nice cool air, and where I am in the 50s, high 50s at night, and nice dry air, beautiful sleeping weather, people call it. But the thing with that is that we need to our bodies need to adjust. And one of the things that really happens is we have a subtle change in the pH, the alkalinity of our blood. And this can weaken the immune system just a little bit. That's hot one day, cold the next. And especially we always thought, it's all because kids going to school. Right? Kids going to school and they come in and they're getting sick. Well, they're getting sick because they're all together. Well, they're getting sick because many times because of that chink in the immune system. And then they can pass things one to another. Another reason people are right now, really worried about the cold and flu season is because of the recent illness, the illness that we all came through that. And now there's talks of new strains or whatever. Just like there are different strains of the flu every year. And so being the unknown, people are a little bit more probably concerned. So I want to talk about that. We're going to be talking about bee pollen, because bee pollen is really great for the immune system. And we've talked about honey before. Honey is really a wonderful food. It's very good for us, but I think you'll be really kind of intrigued. Another thing that kind of made me think of this is a few weeks ago, I was talking to one of my clients who has a prostate problem. And I work with people with prostate problems all the time and have some good tools in my toolkit. But I happened to be trying to see what else we could do and stumbled upon the use of flower pollen for benign prostatic hypertrophy or swollen prostate. And swollen prostate is something that is common to men as they begin to age. Well, I guess we begin to age from the moment we're born, but you know what I'm saying. But you don't have to be an old man to have a prostate problem. And a lot of that we've talked about, a lot of the hormonal things that people are subject to today are due to a lot of the toxic hormones, our toxic hormone driven food supply, our toxic hormone driven air, body products, cleaning products full of these organochlorines, we call them. And so men are very apt to run into prostate problems. And flower pollen is one thing that I discovered. I didn't discover it. I learned about it and I hadn't known about it before. So when I do find out those things, as you well know, I love to make you aware if I can. If you are wanting to participate, and welcome all of you who are here. If you are wanting to participate, you can raise your hand down on your bottom screen. I will click on you. I'll see that, your raised hand. I'll actually see a raised hand and click on it, and you can and I'll ask you to unmute yourself. If you want to be seen, you can be promoted to a panelist. Woohoo. And then everybody else can see you too. So you can also write into the chat. So you click on chat and you have to have your bar expanded. Well, it will expand out when you do that. You can type in there. You can go to the Q&A, and the Q&A will also be a way that I can see that somebody is saying something to me, and I will speak with you. So this is really fun. I love doing this this way. I'm only really bummed because of my one Joe, who called into my radio show all the time. And you all know, you would recognize his voice. And he's been a great encourager and everything. And he's having with his system, and we've tried to work it out, has a very hard time getting on these Zooms. And it's just so frustrating to me. So we're going to still try to work on that, because he's one who really does like to be here live. And I like to have him here live. So anyway, hang on, Joe. So, and for those of you who just arrived, I just want to say, because I know, Connie, this might matter to you. We just started, Dale just set up this morning a YouTube channel for these webinars. And so by next week, we'll be able to put everything on YouTube. It'll be super easy for everybody just to go to our YouTube channel and be able to see anything that we've done in the past, that I've done in the past. It's funny. I have to, and we'll post as soon as a new one comes up. So one of my clients came in last week and asked me, is your husband still writing your podcasts? And I said, what? He goes, yeah, writing your podcast. I'm like, writing my podcast, for heaven's sakes. This isn't even Dale's field. He does a lot. He contributes so much here, but he doesn't write my podcast. I said, I do my newsletter on a Saturday morning. I rarely know what I'm going to talk about until Saturday morning. I throw that together and then I talk. So that's how that happens. And Connie says that would be wonderful to be on YouTube. Thank you, Dale. Yeah. That'll be great. It'll just be so easy for people, and very easy for you to share with other people too, if you want to do that, because anybody can click on a YouTube URL, right? You just click on it. There it is. So yeah, really looking forward to that. So we had done that when we were doing the Proactive Health Collective of Keene. If you remember that a few years ago, it was Dr. Jean Clerkin and Allison Millar and acupuncturist, and Tisa and Matt Apatali, Chiropractors Network Chiropractic. And so we would do this like every other Friday. I'm going to clear. And that was really fun, but we had, Dale had done a YouTube channel for that. So again, we'll be doing that. I'm really excited. So anyway, back to bee pollen. What else? I mean, another substance, flower pollen and bee pollen, they're different, like, right, because the bee pollen comes from the pollen that the bees collect from the flowers, but they're another step beyond. But so anyway, so let's talk about it. And again, you are more than welcome to chime in any way you want. And I'm just going to open my chat. I saw that. Okay, excellent. So here we go. Like, so what is bee pollen, right? You have to ask yourself that question. It might be like, well, we all know vaguely what bee pollen is, but bee pollen, also known as bee bread and ambrosia, is a ball or pellet of field-gathered flower pollen packed by worker honeybees and used as the primary food source for the hive. It consists of simple sugars, protein, minerals, and vitamins, fatty acids, and a small percentage of other components. A mixture of flower pollen, nectar, enzymes, honey, wax, and bee secretions, it contains over 250 biologically active substances. Wow, that's really cool, including vitamins, minerals, antibiotics, and antioxidants. Bee pollen may have health benefits such as lowering cholesterol, boosting immunity, reducing inflammation, and healing wounds. So I have there an article, 10 ways your health can be improved by eating 1 spoon of this unappreciated bee product. And they're probably meaning like 1 spoon a day. But hang with me, because I do want to explain to you later. I learned you don't just buy the product and sprinkle it on, like on my newsletter, right? My newsletter, I'm looking at, has it just sprinkled like granules on an acai pudding with some chia seeds. I learned in my investigation this morning, earlier today, that you really want to prepare bee pollen properly in order to make it digestible. Because we're like, what's the sense of eating something if you can't digest it? And what problems might it cause if you can't digest it? So I'll get to that soon. Again, this is all in my newsletter. So when you have time, you want to investigate any of that stuff, you know the drill, just click on the links and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So this particular one, bee pollen, go here. I have here 10 ways your health can be. And so I'm going to go here. 10, these are short. Then I'm going to go to the longer one, which actually is about 25 ways, and it's more in depth. You know, I like the in-depth stuff. So number one, bee pollen is an energy enhancer. The range of nutrients found within bee pollen makes it a great natural energizer. The carbohydrates, protein, and B vitamins can help keep you going all day by enhancing stamina and fighting off fatigue. It's a skin soother. Bee pollen is often used in topical products that aim to treat inflammatory conditions and common skin irritations like psoriasis and eczema. The amino acids and vitamins protect the skin and aid in the regeneration of cells. Now, we don't use bee pollen in our skincare products, but we do use beeswax. Respiratory system. It was really interesting putting up bee pollen product on my web store, all of the categories that this can fall under when it pertains to health. It was click, 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 yes, click. It was like so many things. That's what I love. You know that if you've been following me for any time at all. I love things that do one thing that does so many things. And you can say, Becky, now we have to eat bee pollen. No, you don't. You don't have to do everything. I'm just bringing these things to you to use if you want to know about, to just know there's something there that you might want to use. And many of you tell me you love, you like hearing this stuff. So, excuse me. Bee pollen contains the respiratory system. Bee pollen contains a high quantity of antioxidants that may have an anti-inflammatory effect on the tissues of the lungs, preventing the onset of asthma. Today I'm drinking the brain tea. That over there. Treating allergies. Pollen reduces the presence of histamine. That is so funny, right? You think, no, it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. Pollen makes me so allergic. But it says pollen reduces the presence of histamine, ameliorating many allergies. Dr. Leo Conway, MD of Denver, Colorado, reported that 94% of his patients were completely free from allergy symptoms once treated with oral feedings of pollen. Everything from asthma to allergies to sinus problems were cleared. Whoa. Confirming that bee pollen is wonderfully effective against a wide range of respiratory diseases. One of those ways that might be is through its desensitization of us from pollen, from pollen that makes us sneeze and have all this histamine reaction. Digestive system. In addition to healthful vitamins, minerals, and protein, bee pollen contains enzymes that can aid in digestion. Enzymes assist your body in getting all the nutrients you need from the food you eat. It is also an immune system booster, and that's really what I was going for with the idea of the cold and flu season upon us. Pollen is good for the intestinal flora and thereby supports the immune system. According to holistic health expert Dr. Joseph Mercola, many of you familiar with, I certainly am, bee pollen has antibiotic-type properties that can help protect the body from contracting viruses. Now, that doesn't make sense because antibiotic-type properties don't protect against viruses. They're bacteria. But hopefully what he's saying here is that the properties are also antiviral. Maybe we can extrapolate that. We'd have to see some studies talk about that to differentiate. But it is also rich in antioxidants that protect the cells from the damaging oxidation of free radicals, which we talk about every single week in some form or fashion. And then treats addictions. Used holistically for healing addictions and inhibiting cravings by suppressing impulses. Because bee pollen crashes cravings, it may be useful for healthy weight loss. However, more research is needed into these potential benefits, particularly when it comes to weight management, right? And they always have to say that because otherwise they're making claims. Supports the cardiovascular system. Oh, looks like I have someone who would. Okay, I'm asking you to unmute Connie. I think I'm doing that. Let's see, promote to panel. Do you want me to, Connie, can you actually, I have asked, I don't know, Connie, let me tell me if you can actually, I have another one here. Ask to unmute, ask to unmute. So I'm trying to do that. So if anybody, I've sent the ask to unmute to a couple of you thinking that I was supposed to. But if you didn't indicate that and you don't want to talk, then just don't unmute. All right, so hope that's not too confusing. Supports the cardiovascular system. This is something we're super concerned with, everybody's concerned with, and it seems even more so today than ever, if I might say. Bee pollen contains, hello? Hello? Bee pollen contains large amounts of rutin, an antioxidant bioflavonoid that helps strengthen the blood vessels, assists with circulatory problems, and corrects cholesterol levels. Its antipotent, anti-clotting powers could help prevent heart attack and stroke. So that's a really good thing to see, and really, really great. Okay, now let me. If someone again is trying to talk and you can't, let me know. You to just type it in the chat or something, or in the Q&A. Prostate aid. Men who suffer from benign prostate hyperplasia, so enlargement, benign means it's not cancer, can find relief by using bee pollen. Bee pollen can help reduce inflammation to stop frequent urges to urinate. And then their 10th issue was infertility problems. So bee pollen stimulates and restores ovarian function, and therefore may be used to assist in accelerating pregnancy, as well as being a hormonal booster. It is also a great aphrodisiac, so watch out. Very, very cool. I'm going to now flip over to the 25 bee pollen benefits here from the School of Bees, and just kind of breeze through those a little bit, because those will be, there will be more of them. Duh. A rich source of protein. So if you're thinking, about adding to your food, which we're going to talk about how to do that in a little bit, how to add bee pollen to your food in the best way, and with some suggestions of how to do that. It is made up of more protein than any other animal source. Wow. Who knew? It contains 23% protein, more than eggs, beef, cheese, or chicken of equal weight. What's more, half of this protein content are free amino acids, which means that they can be easily assimilated and used by the body without a further breakdown. So great, high in protein, but you're absolutely not going to eat, 4 ounces of bee pollen. But think about putting it, properly into your yogurt or smoothie or something like that, or or properly prepared on your cereal or whatever it might be. Full of antioxidants. Researchers have found bee pollen to exhibit impressive amounts of antioxidant properties. So the way they describe that here, like cigarette smoke, car exhaust, all kinds of air pollution cause oxidation reactions that produce substances damaging to the body. And we have plenty of those surrounding us now. In the body itself, oxidation takes place accompanying organ and cellular functions. Antioxidants counter, inhibit the negative effects of oxidation to keep the body healthy. Talk about that all the time. Researchers have found bee pollen to exhibit impressive amounts of antioxidant properties, just like fermented food. As bee pollen also undergoes fermentation in the hive, this is not surprising. Some antioxidants found in food that are also present in bee pollen are resveratrol. There we go, resveratrol. Those are very popular substances for supplements for their antioxidant properties. Commonly found in wine, flavanols that are found in chocolate, and lycopene chocolate. And lycopene also found in tomatoes. So lycopene we know is super important for our heart health and for our eyes. The vitamins A, C, and E are all antioxidants found in bee pollen. Super important. It's a superfood, number 3. Bee pollen has nearly the whole spectrum of vitamins and minerals that the human body needs. So it is not surprising that it is a fairly popular dietary supplement. As a complete and nutrient-dense food, it can fill in the cracks, so to say, on one's nutritional needs and boost our overall health. So again, something to kind of pump up your, maybe your meal or your snack. If you're having something like mid-afternoon, maybe some good quality yogurt, something like that, with some berries, and maybe throw on some, a teaspoon of bee pollen. Good for the heart. We talked about that. And I just read about that from the other place. Good for the liver. Studies point to chestnut bee pollen showing positive effects to liver health and can even contribute to the protection and faster healing process of a damaged liver brought about by high toxicity. Silibinin is a treatment used for liver injury that has the same effects. However, silibinin showed severe side effects that the bee pollen did not. And that's really interesting because silibinin actually is taken from milk thistle, from the plant milk thistle. I think you would have to take a whole lot of milk thistle to have any severe side effects. And then, of course, milk thistle works by modestly raising glutathione levels, which is the big liver detox. So anyway, that's just interesting to me. Reduces cholesterol levels. Bee pollen supplements have been shown to normalize. That's what I like. Not necessarily reduction, but normalization of cholesterol and triglycerides in the body. So your lipids and triglycerides, very important, thereby further reducing the risk of heart attack and stroke. It also reduces inflammation. Bee pollen has a significant anti-inflammatory effect that is instrumental to many of its beneficial properties. Inflammation is a culprit to a number of conditions, such as skin disorders, arthritis, liver disease, neurological disorders, and psoriasis, among other things. So again, a kind of one thing for many things. Boosts immunity. As the bee pollen is full of antioxidant, it decreases red and white blood cell oxidation that promotes better oxygen circulation. It contains nutrients all proven to strengthen the immune system, such as beta carotene, magnesium, calcium, selenium, lecithin, cysteine, vitamins B, C, D, and E, and nucleic acids, etc. Its antimicrobial properties also help the immune system. So, okay, do you get the kind of a little bit of a distinction there? Is that you've got, on the one hand, you have things that, nutrients that support the strength of the innate immune system. The innate immune system is very much overlooked in the world of vaccination. The world of vaccination seems to be blind to the function of the innate immune system, which simply means that the immune system itself develops from the time we're born. It just keeps developing so that we have a strong immune system, things like our blood cells, to fight off anything that comes our way, right? The vaccine speak is kind of like, we are all doomed. If we don't have antibodies against every single thing we can possibly identify out there, then we are going to get it. And this is wrong. We need to focus on cell-mediated, the cell-mediated part of the immune system, the innate immune system. I always like to point to this example of Dr. Oh gosh, what is his name? Starts with a B. Come on, he's one of my favorites. Great, I can't remember his name. He wrote excitotoxins, the taste that, oh gosh. Anyway, it will come to me. But he's a neurologist and he's very famous. And he said the hepatitis B vaccine that babies get at birth, like 12 hours after they're born, for heaven's sakes, delays the development of the innate immune system by 6 months. So see, we're putting vaccines into these young, immature immune systems, and they are obliterated. They're messing with the immune system horribly. And and changing the way their natural immune system is supposed to develop. So a breastfed baby is getting the antibodies and things from the mother and is very protected from all of that as their immune system is growing and developing and maturing. And so this we're messing with. Unfortunately, we are definitely messing with that in ways we shouldn't be. And in any case, the immune system. But now, if you look at the bee pollen, coming back to the bee pollen, we have in here that it's antimicrobial also, right? So in a way to repel bacteria and things that you might catch. So it's similar to golden seal in that way, I would say. When I use golden seal, like in our nip it in the bud formula or our fluence formula, we use the echinacea the echinacea to we have like echinacea purpurea root and herb, and then we have the echinacea angustifolia for a really nice broad spectrum echinacea. And that really helps with the immune system. It boosts your immune system, the innate immune system. And then you bring in golden seal and Oregon grapefruit, which are berberines, and they also are antibacterial, which is why we don't take them, generally speaking, for longer than 2 weeks at a time. So very cool. You've got that going there too. Kills bacteria. Bee pollen was found to have antimicrobial properties when tested against strains of E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Staph aureus, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Most of these microbes are common bacteria that can also be responsible for infections of the skin, urinary tract, intestines, stomach, lungs, kidney, etc. E. coli is commonly found in the gut, but harmful strains can cause diarrhea, urinary tract infections, pneumonia, and other respiratory illnesses. Salmonella enterica serotypes cause salmonellosis, gastroenteritis, and typhoid fever. Listeriosis, a bacterial infection caused by listeria, blah, 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 can further cause meningitis, encephalitis, or severe sepsis. So that's really cool. And you don't have to worry about too much of an antibiotic effect taking this in small amounts on a daily basis at all. And I also like the idea that when you're eating this with food, if you're getting, that type, these are things that can cause, some of them can cause food poisoning. Promotes wound healing. We talked about that. Desensitization to allergies. Yeah, it says, I'm going to go a little bit more into, I'm going to read that one, this one too, even though we talked about it, just because it explains a little bit more. Probably one of the most common uses of bee pollen is in reducing allergic reaction. Consumption of bee pollen has been found to desensitize the body and prevent allergies such as hay fever. This works to develop a kind of natural immunity. The bee pollen contains minute traces of allergen. This amount is not enough to trigger a severe allergic reaction, but can still stimulate the immune system to start the production of antibodies that can, in turn, decrease the susceptibility of an individual to allergens. The bee pollen's anti-allergy effect is especially effective if you can obtain the product from your area. Local bee pollen will be made of local flora containing the elements that have caused the allergy. And I was talking about Joe, who used to call in very frequently, and he would, when I was talking about allergies anytime on the radio, he would mention that he gets the bee pollen locally here in Surrey. Not the pollen, he gets the honey, and people use honey for the same purpose in the spring. And then he gets the fall honey for the fall allergies, to sense another reminder of those of you who suffer from seasonal allergies to think about the pollen in your local area and get some really good raw honey, of course, that you can, raw honey, and then also the pollen. Anti-cancer potential. Bee pollen can potentially contribute to fighting off cancer cells or at least reduce cancer risks. Bee pollen extracts have been found to have a degree of cytotoxicity or cell toxicity that may be used against certain cancer cell types, and found to inhibit cancer cell growth or proliferation. It also has properties for cancer prevention that inhibits mutation in genes and DNA. Flavonoids in particular were observed to prevent the development of breast cancer. And anyway, anti-radiation properties. I really like this because this is something that we're struggling with in today's world as well. Regardless of its anti-cancer properties, bee pollen is still advisable to cancer patients for its potent anti-radiation benefits. Bee pollen is found to relieve radiation therapy symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and sleep disorder. Okay, so for that radiation, it does this by acting as a buffer against the degradation that the body undergoes throughout the radioactive exposure. That's really good for me to know, to pass on to my my clients who might be might in the future be undergoing radiation treatment. Even though healthy individuals can benefit from this, every day we are exposed to natural radiation in the soil, natural gas, drinking water, as well as radiation caused by technology and consumer products such as cell phones and watches. Bee pollen can provide protection to some degree against this constant exposure. That's really novel, I would say. That's quite unique for something like this. And I think that's really good to know, because a lot of people are more and more concerned as we are becoming more and more inundated with sources of this exposure. Aids in iron absorption. This is good to know. Not everybody has a problem with iron absorption, but when people do have a problem with iron absorption, it can be very, very detrimental to health just because of not having your blood oxygenated properly. The number one cause of anemia is low blood iron levels. Bee pollen contains abundant vitamin C and bioflavonoids, both proven to help in the absorption of iron. Research on the effects of bee pollen on iron deficient rats has determined that bee pollen alleviates the symptoms of iron deficiency to a great extent. I have a client in mind right now that we've been trying everything to try to get that up, that iron level up. They found that the bee product aids in the iron absorption and utilization in the rat's body. A decrease in their blood platelet count and an increase in hemoglobin levels are both indicative of anti-anemic activity. Very excellent, very excellent. I was talking several weeks ago, before I was doing this on Zoom actually, about vitamin A from fish liver oil, not beta carotene and not synthetic A, and its effect on anemia and iron absorption as well. Energy and stamina. Relieve stress. Some athletes swear by the effectivity of bee pollen in boosting energy levels and increasing their stamina. Rutin is not only good for the heart, that's that bioflavonoid. This antioxidant, along with the high content of B vitamins, carbohydrates, and protein in bee pollen, can significantly enhance the body's performance. And that's something we were focused on as well. Over several months back earlier in the year, talking about why are we so sick, and then talking about nutrients that go missing. And we did quite a bit on the B vitamins, and certainly just recently on vitamin C. And yeah, I should actually do one on E. I've never done a program on E. I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Relieve stress. The same components that provide additional energy also help the body fight off fatigue and relieve stress. Very important in today's world. For example, since rutin helps in circulation, it also helps blood flow to the nervous system. This helps against tiredness and stress by raising mental capacity and wakefulness. So it is also a, fertility and libido booster. Bee pollen has been observed to show a restorative effect on ovarian functions. All right, that's really good to know for people, especially women who are wanting to start their families in their 30s or around there. You wouldn't think 30 is very old, but when it comes to ovarian and egg reserves and things like that, that can be considered getting old. I work with people all the time with that concern, and we have some cool tricks up our sleeve, but this will be another recommendation, or at least option, suggestion. Some results also point to bee pollen as an aphrodisiac, increasing sexual function and libido in men and women. Now here, relief from symptoms of prostate problems, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into the pollen flower pollen and the prostate. before we'll wrap up with how to use the bee pollen. Okay, looks like we're all good here. And prostate enlargement is a natural part of aging in men, but in many cases it leads to benign prostatic hyperplasia, or otherwise known as BPH. The abnormal increase in the size of the prostate gland common to men as they age. Since prostate becomes quite large, it presses against the urethra. So you have your prostate gland and then the urethra going to the bladder, right? You're coming from your kidneys and then into the bladder, passes through the prostate, and it has to come through there. So, just picture it getting mashed. It's getting squeezed, right? So the urine has a very hard time passing through. So this leads to, misery for guys. The condition is accompanied by the frequent urge to urinate and trouble or inability to do so. It can also lead to further complications such as urinary tract, bladder, and kidney problems. Currently, there has been growing evidence that points to bee pollen contributing to the management of BPH and prostatitis symptoms, which is like a chronic inflammation of the prostate beyond BPH. It can be acute and be bacterial, or it can just be this chronic inflammation, which is really painful and miserable. Think about it. Maybe what you would do is compare it a little bit in women to interstitial cystitis of the bladder, just in the fact that that is just so interrupting and just very miserable all the time. It's not something that comes and goes like an infection. Furthermore, men report that they find relief after consumption of bee pollen. Its anti-inflammatory properties also most likely help in relieving the frequent urination and the accompanying difficulties that go with it. Digestion helps with digestion. We talked about that. It has a high enzymatic count that regulates the intestinal flora. So think probiotic, right? I think if you're adding this in, it's another way, like a fermented food, to add probiotic to your diet. Bee pollen creams were found to diminish wrinkles, while it's wound healing and skin problems and skin care. Side effects of bee pollen. There are not a lot of downsides to bee pollen use and consumption, as is it safe for most people. However, it would be better for those allergic to honey and other bee products to give this one a miss. Bee pollen has been known to cause allergic reactions, including hives, wheeze, swelling, and even anaphylaxis. The good news is, if you are a person like that, you can go straight to pollen itself, the flower pollen, and bypass what the bees do with it, and still get a lot of the properties of the flower pollen. In fact, that's what we're using that's what's being used for in products for benign prostate hypertrophy. In fact, I have one on my newsletter that we carry called Prostapollen Triple Strength by Life Extension. And the differences in says flower pollen extract is an extremely unique prostate health ingredient that a lot of men could benefit from, but which many aren't familiar with. And so I'm going to just go there for a second, or maybe, okay, I'm going to go there briefly. And you can look at, again, you can look at this all when you have a chance, if you're interested. Study 1, the first study takes us all the way to Japan, where researchers gave participants experienced prostate-related urinary and sexual difficulties 375 milligrams of Graminex flower pollen extract per day for up to 3 months using a scale called the International Prostate Symptom Score. They were able to track the men's self-reported progress on things like erectile and urinary function. The results were quite decisive. 90% of men saw an improvement in their score. That's really good record. That's like, okay, maybe worth a try, right? Study 2, for 1 year, 208 doctors tracked the progress of 1,894 men who were given rye flower pollen extract for their prostate health. They focused on markers such as nighttime and daytime urination frequency, urgency, flow, and whether or not the men felt like they had fully emptied their bladder. After that year was up, the data spoke for itself. Not only was the rye well tolerated by 99% of participants, it made a measurable difference in promoting strong prostate and urinary health in over 90% of the men studied. So there we have, again, that 90%. That is very statistically significant. And then number 3, a type of study called a meta-analysis distills the results from a wide range of the University of Mississippi pharmaceutics. Professor who conducted this meta-analysis had a very positive conclusion to make based on the extensive findings he examined. After remarking on the continued record of success in supporting better prostate and urinary health, the rye pollen, he notes its power at improving quality of life. Anyway, that is really cool. So the side effects that have been reported with Graminex are fairly mild. This is a certain brand using the rye, but actually the Graminex is what's in the life extension product too. So it's the same pollen from the rye plant. It says, but it can include stomach discomfort, heartburn, nausea in those pills. But if you do also look at what's the difference between flower pollen and bee pollen, and I liked this little explanatory. Here we go. People consume flower pollen extract and bee pollen for nutrition and to treat a variety of ailments, including allergies, prostate problems, and menstrual symptoms. Advanced manufacturing techniques have allowed the production of clean flower pollen extract that contains rich amounts of nutrients. Bee pollen extract, however, still includes bee parts and debris, making it less safe for people with allergies and less digestible. So you can read more about that. So if you feel like you're a person who might be sensitive to bee pollen products, you can go for a pollen, a straight pollen product, a flower pollen product, and probably do very well with that. So with that said, I would like to, as I promised, I thought that this was, and of course, I'm all about food and recipes. I always love that kind of stuff. Oh, somebody asked me last week about my yogurt recipe, and I put that in there. And I just want to do a little update on that. I've always done for those of you who are interested, I've always done my yogurt once it gets to the Instant Pot for 12 hours on the medium setting. The longer you process it in the Instant Pot, the tangier it gets. So mine was really tangy at 12 hours. So this week, or the last time I did it a couple days ago, I put it for 10 hours instead, and it's perfect to our taste. It just loses that kind of too much pucker up feel. And just a little heads up on that if you are delving into doing that. It is really fun. It's really easy to do. It makes great yogurt, and it's just good for you. It's a great vehicle for the bee pollen. So I'm going to get to that, how to consume bee pollen. It says it's indisputable that pollen has an exceptional effect on the human organism. Pollen is a very healthy substance, which helps to regulate metabolism and glands function, protects the body from different infections by making the immune system stronger, improves circulation. It is very good for eyesight and eliminates fatigue, but you will not feel any of the pollen's benefits unless you consume pollen in the correct way. Now, that's really important to know, right? Because otherwise you just buy bee pollen and you take it according to directions, which is basically like, eat a teaspoon a day or something. She says this author here, and this is you're going to want to, if you want to pursue this, you're going to want to open this one up. I even put a link to this on my web store in the product description so people can see how actually to use it beyond the label of the product that I chose. She said, I was speaking to my friend who owns a small honey-based product store, and she was telling me about the experience she gained from talking to her customers. Very few consumed bee pollen in the proper way. I did not know much about bee pollen, except it is extremely healthy, but had no idea that there are several wrong ways of consumption. I decided to learn more, so I started as a volunteer in my friend's store. To tell you the truth, it was really a great experience. The most important thing of all is to know if you are allergic to bee pollen. If the answer is positive, you should avoid both bee pollen and meadow honey, as it contains pollen in big percentage. But if you do not have allergies, you are free to enjoy in all the benefits the superfood can offer you. What is actually bee pollen? What is actually bee pollen? And we talked about that. Okay. Here are some examples of how people misuse the bee pollen. I take 1 teaspoon of bee pollen, chew it, and swallow it. That was quote unquote. Now another quote. I put 1 teaspoon of bee pollen in a glass of water, add some sugar or honey to make it sweet, and drink it. Unquote. Quote. I grind bee pollen, and that way I get pollen powder, which is more suitable for consumption. Unquote. The most important reason why this is all wrong is that a human digestive system cannot break the celluloid membrane with which the bee pollen grain is covered. In all of the foregoing examples, pollen grain or powder only run through our body without using any single benefit of a rich pollen repertoire. The most drastic case was told by one vegetarian woman who used pollen powder wrongly for years. When my friend explained to her how pollen had to be used, she could only feel sorry for her for all those pounds of bee pollen she consumed in vain. Yeah, all that money down the drain. Bee pollen membrane has to be soaked in order to crack it and makes free all those great ingredients human organism can utilize of a bee pollen grain. If possible, purchase and use raw pollen. And the one that I found and have that I'll have in my store and have up on my site is 100% raw. About 20 in the drying process, about 20% of the value of the pollen is lost. After the drying, the rest of the pollen value is lost linearly over time. After 6 months, such pollen lost about half of its value. So anyway, so the priorities are raw pollen. Number 1, after cleaning, it was immediately stored in the freezer. Dried pollen after drying was immediately placed in the freezer. Dried pollen from the beginning, blah, 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 blah. All right. Okay, so here are some ideas. And of course, I'm reading these, but you're not going to be furiously taking notes. You're going to want to just go and see all of this, just like you would read recipes. Take 1 teaspoon of bee pollen and mix it in lukewarm water. In the evening would be the best time, and leave for 8 hours. After that period, you can sweeten, stir, and drink. If you sweeten it with honey and add up to 15 drops of propolis, bee propolis, which you can also get, again, check if you have allergies first, you get an extraordinary and complete preparation. Wow, that sounds really, really like mighty pollen. Okay, 2, pollen can be dissolved in yogurt because it is known that lactic acid better dissolves the celluloid membrane than water. So maybe like if you're going to have it with your yogurt the following morning or whatever, stir that up overnight. Stir that up and let it sit overnight. You can also mix bee pollen with luke water, like in example 1, but add freshly squeezed lemon juice in order to improve the dissolution of the pollen's membrane. Well, that sounds smart with any of those things, right? Just add a little lemon. 4, you can mix bee pollen grains even with honey, but in that case, you have to leave the jar with this mixture to rest for at least 3 to 4 days, and you should stir a few times per day. So that one's right out the window for me. Bee pollen is lighter than honey, so it will come up to the surface. It is very important to soak bee pollen in the honey in order to crack the pollen's membrane. After 3 to 4 days, store this mixture in the fridge and consume it on a daily basis. Well, okay, I correct myself then. I wouldn't mind doing that as another option. You prepare it and then it's ready and you can just dig in whenever you want it. Actually, that might be a very good way to do it then. So, okay, some examples of how, again, here's milk with bee pollen and juices. Prepare 17 ounces of lukewarm milk, 1 freshly squeezed orange for the juice of 1 freshly squeezed orange is what they mean. Half of freshly squeezed lemon for orange, 1.7 ounces of honey, 0.35 ounce of bee pollen. So that's what, like, whatever, 2/3 of an ounce. Put bee pollen and honey in lukewarm milk, stir well, let it cool, and then add orange and lemon juices. This multivitamin drink will improve your immune system. That sounds really excellent. It sounds like it would taste good too, but you've got the orange and the lemon and the milk, the honey, and you're breaking that down. Sour milk with bee pollen. Take 1.5 cups of sour milk or plain yogurt and add 1 tablespoon of bee pollen powder to it. Stir well. I suggest this recipe especially to older people. It is able to improve liver, heart, and endocrine system functions. Wow, and so easy to eat. for those of us who are older. Okay, sour milk with honey, bee pollen, and carrot juice. Take 1.5 cups of sour milk or yogurt, add 1 freshly squeezed tangerine juice, 2 tablespoons of carrot juice, a tablespoon of honey, and tablespoon of pollen powder. This drink is exceptional for kids because it improves appetite and fights against anemia. Wow, it sounds tasty. It sounds really nutritious, a lot better than what a lot of kids get for breakfast, right? Here's a sportsman drink. Prepare 34 fluid ounces of milk, add 7 ounces of honey, 1.7 ounces of bee pollen, 1 egg, freshly squeezed lemon, tomato, and orange. The sportsman should take this drink half an hour before the match, a couple of tablespoons. This drink contributes to the necessary psychological concentration and improves physical strength. And the psychological concentration. Wow, that's really cool. Beauty drink. All right, let's go for that one. In the food process, put all together 7 ounces of carrots, peeled orange, 1/2 freshly squeezed lemon juice, a tablespoon of bee pollen, a tablespoon of honey, add 7 fluid ounces of milk and mix it well. If you use this drink on a regular basis, you will keep beautiful and healthy skin. This mixture can also be used as a facial mask. Strawberry and pollen healthy dessert. Prepare 1.5 cup of cottage cheese, 1.5 cup of mashed strawberries, a tablespoon of honey, and tablespoon of bee pollen. This dessert helps with anemia. Strawberries contain a lot of iron. Also helps to help people with liver and kidney disorders. The cottage cheese has diuretic properties. Who knew? Who thinks of cottage cheese having diuretic properties? So those are just some ways, and you might want to do some more exploring, but I think it's great. I think I'm just all into this kind of thing at home. I'm a real homebody, love to do food prep and cooking and things like that. Dale's all into that too. So I'm definitely going to be starting using bee pollen as soon as it arrives this week. I've already placed my order and I will have it Tuesday. So have it available for you too. If you're interested in it, you can find it on my website, but if you order that, it will go out from me. Anyway, if you order it from me, it will go out on Tuesday. But yeah, so that brings us right up to the hour. I hope you've enjoyed this information. And I hope some of you will experiment using some bee pollen or maybe some flower pollen. I really think also the flower pollen for guys with the prostate issues is a big help, because we have some guys, right, who you use the saw palmetto and the pygeum and the beta sitosterol and glutathione even, and many things that help with pumpkin seed, that help with those combination supplements that help with prostate, and still could use more help. I would think adding the flower pollen would be a good thing to try. And I would also say, if you have never used anything and you want to try something for your prostate, you might want to go there with flower pollen to start and see if you measure right up there with the 90% of people in those studies who reported improvement. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining me, and we'll be back again by next week. I will have our YouTube channel up, and we'll have our posts on there, and we will be making those available. As if you came in later to the program and didn't hear that, we'll be doing that, and that's going to make it very, very easy for you to access and share. Again, take care, be well, and have a wonderful day.